Ghosting doesn't always mean disrespect. It can be divine protection. Sometimes the very act of disappearing, of going silent, of cutting communication, God will often pull you back, not to punish you, but to protect you from people who can no longer walk with the version of you He's developing. You can't evolve in a space that only honors your old self. And if you're surrounded by people who only benefit from your brokenness, your silence becomes your shield. Walking away isn't always an insult. It's often an instruction from heaven. The same way Jesus withdrew to the mountain to pray. Sometimes you have to withdraw from people to preserve your peace. Ghosting becomes spiritual when the noise of others threatens the voice of God in your life. Your healing requires silence, not social noise. There's something sacred about solitude that no amount of conversation can replace. Every time you try to heal in public, the wounds get poked by people who were never qualified to touch them. You keep trying to process your pain around people who profit from your weakness. Healing is loud on the inside but quiet on the outside. You need stillness to let your spirit breathe again. You can't stitch yourself together when you're being pulled in every direction by text, posts, calls, and expectation. The world wants your attention, but your soul wants restoration. But your soul wants restoration. But your soul wants restoration. And that can't happen unless you stop explaining yourself and start excavating what's been buried under years of pretending to be okay. Some of the most powerful healing happens in the quiet spaces nobody sees. When you stop talking, you start hearing what your spirit's been trying to say all along. Not everyone deserves access to your energy, thoughts, or evolution. Access is a privilege, not a right. Just because they've known you doesn't mean they still deserve to know you. You can outgrow someone without hating them. You can love someone from a distance and still block their ability to affect your peace. Growth will demand that you restrict access. And the more valuable your vision becomes, the more boundaries you'll need to build. Stop letting people sit front row in your life who only clap when it's convenient. Stop allowing people to download your dreams when all they do is drain your drive. You are not required to stay available to people who are unavailable when it matters. Sometimes ghosting is the highest form of self-respect. It says, I'm finally choosing me, even if that means losing you. Separation is sometimes the only way to regain clarity. When you stay in constant connection with people who confuse you, you begin to forget who you really are. There is nothing wrong with taking a season to retreat, to reset, to regroup. Every major turning point in life requires you to shut out the chaos so you can hear your conviction. You can't walk into your next level carrying everyone from your last one. Some people are part of your history, not your destiny. And it's not cruel to let them go. It's courageous. When you're always surrounded by opinions, you begin to lose sight of your original instruction. You've been seeking validation from voices that don't even value vision. Sometimes the clearest word you'll ever hear is the one you hear when everything else goes silent. Growth often happens in solitude, not in group chats, not in crowds. You are not built to constantly be in conversation and still expect elevation. The cocoon is quiet. The cave is dark. The desert is lonely. But every one of those places has birthed world changers, prophets, pioneers, and purpose carriers. Stop waiting for applause to grow. Stop thinking you need company to evolve. Growth requires separation because transformation is private. The best parts of you are not built on stages. They're forged in solitude. While the world is distracted by noise, the wise are being shaped in silence. God doesn't shout in the storm. He whispers in the wilderness. So if you've been called into isolation, don't resist it. Lean into it. It's not punishment. It's preparation. If they drain you more than they develop you, ghosting is a gift to yourself. Energy is sacred. Time is holy. Your presence is powerful. If someone can't contribute to your growth, why should they have unlimited access to your presence? You've given so much to people who don't even notice when you're empty. You've poured into others while your own cup cracked. It's not selfish to retreat. It's stewardship. You're not rejecting them, you're rescuing yourself. Emotional leeches don't just take your energy, they slow your elevation. And the longer you keep them around, the more you'll question your own worth. It's time to normalize saying no more without explanation. You're allowed to ghost environments that no longer match your energy. You don't owe constant availability to people who offer you inconsistency. Let that sink in. You've bent over backwards for people who can't even show up straight. You've answered texts at 2 a.m. for people who won't reply when you need them most. And yet you keep yourself on call like a servant while they treat you like an option. Stop it. That's not love. That's self-betrayal. You don't owe access to people just because they want it. Availability is earned through consistency, not demanded by proximity. If they can't show up, they shouldn't have a key to your peace. Ghosting inconsistent people is not immature. It's wise. You're choosing sanity over chaos. That's strength. Isolation is where God downloads vision, purpose, and direction. Most people don't receive clarity because they're too noisy to hear it. You've been praying for answers, but have you been still enough to receive them? You're waiting for a sign, but God's waiting for your silence. Every major biblical leader had a season of isolation before elevation. Moses went to the mountain. Elijah hid by the brook. Jesus fasted in the wilderness. What makes you think you'll hear clearly in crowds when clarity was never meant to be communal? It's in the quiet where the next step becomes visible. It's in the stillness that destiny gets unlocked. Letting go of distractions allows you to hear divine instruction. The longer you stay surrounded by distraction, the further you drift from your direction. Every unhealed conversation, every meaningless scroll, every unnecessary meetup pulls you away from your path. The devil doesn't always come to destroy you. Sometimes he just distracts you. And if the enemy can't kill your calling, he'll try to clutter your calendar. But when you ghost distractions, you create space for downloads. Heaven speaks clearest in environments of stillness. So when you silence the unnecessary, you amplify the divine. You don't need another conversation. You need a consecration. Ghosting isn't hate, it's healing. It's not rebellion, it's revelation. You're not being cruel for cutting ties. You're being called. When you start to heal, you'll realize you can't be surrounded by the same patterns that broke you. Healing is a sacred work, and not everyone qualifies to witness it. You don't have to explain your exit to people who never respected your presence. God is calling you to a new chapter. And some characters don't belong in the next scene. Stop apologizing for evolving. Ghosting isn't an attitude problem. It's an alignment solution. When your spirit is out of sync, disconnection becomes the first step to peace. You're not missing out on them. They're missing out on the new you. The version of you they knew is no longer available. The people who took your kindness for weakness, your presence for granted, your time for a toy, they don't get to walk with the warrior you've become. They lost access when they lost appreciation. You're not lonely. You're leveling up. The reason you feel the gap is because you've grown out of the space. And that's not a setback. It's a sign. Don't chase who walked away. Let them miss what they mishandled. You're not losing people. You're gaining power. The wrong connections will block your elevation. Just like weeds choke growth in a garden, wrong relationships suffocate your purpose. Some people are assignments from the enemy to slow you down. You didn't recognize it at first because they smiled well, supported you just enough, and stayed close enough to confuse you. But now you see it. Every time you connected, you lost clarity. Every time you explained yourself, you felt more misunderstood. That's not alignment. That's warfare. And ghosting them is not you being petty. It's you reclaiming your promise. Disconnect to elevate. In silence you'll hear your soul, and God clearly. Your spirit has been shouting while your phone's been buzzing. You've ignored your intuition for conversation. You've numbed your emotions with distraction. But now it's time. Silence is calling. Stillness is sacred. When you turn the volume down on the world, you turn the frequency up on heaven. You're not just ghosting people. You're entering presence. And in that place you'll feel the divine like never before. What you were seeking in others, God has been holding the whole time. You just needed to be quiet enough to find it. It's time to ghost everyone so you can find yourself again. Not forever, not out of bitterness, but for a season of resurrection. You've been buried beneath everyone's expectations. You've been shaped by noise, by opinions, by guilt. But now it's time to rise. Let them wonder where you went. Let them gossip. Let them speculate. While they talk, you transform. While they assume, you ascend. This is not your ending. It's your emergence. You're not disappearing. You're being developed. You're not ghosting people. You're guarding purpose. Your peace is more important than their opinions. That inner stillness, that sacred calm, is priceless. And if protecting that means disconnecting from people who disrupt it, so be it. No one else has to understand your process. They don't have to get it. It's not their journey. It's yours. You don't owe anyone an explanation for putting your peace first. And if ghosting is what it takes to hear from God, then disappear boldly. This is your season of silence, strategy, and spiritual strength. Ghost them, grow up, and go forward. Everything you've been praying for is on the other side of goodbye. Your healing requires silence, not social noise. True healing doesn't happen when you're constantly distracted, constantly talking, constantly explaining your pain to people who don't even have the capacity to hold it. Some of the deepest wounds in your spirit can't be stitched in public. They require sacred silence. Because when you're always around noise, you lose the ability to hear yourself think, to hear God speak, and to feel your own emotional truth. You've been wounded in noise, wounded by gossip, wounded by misunderstanding, wounded by betrayal, and yet you're trying to heal in the same chaotic energy that broke you. It won't work. Healing is a holy process, and it demands separation. You need stillness like your body needs oxygen. You need quiet like your soul needs rest. There comes a point where the next conversation, the next update, the next social scroll doesn't bring peace. It just delays your process. You've been trying to be everything to everybody, and now you don't even recognize yourself. You've been giving pieces of your soul away, in exchange for temporary attention, hoping that maybe someone would finally see the pain beneath your performance. But they didn't. They liked your posts, but they didn't love your heart. They laughed at your jokes, but they didn't feel your spirit. They stayed for the entertainment, but not for the essence. And now here you are, exhausted, scattered, and spiritually dehydrated. That's why silence is necessary, not as a punishment, but as a prescription. You can't keep pouring out when you're running on fumes. You need to withdraw, not because you're weak, but because you're wise. Wisdom says, let me step back so I can be whole again. Wisdom says, let me unplug from what distracts me so I can reconnect with what defines me. In the quiet, the real work begins. That's where the buried pain rises to the surface. That's where the uncried tears begin to fall. That's where you start to face the truth you've been trying to avoid. Busyness. Silence doesn't feel good at first. It's uncomfortable. It forces you to confront the parts of yourself you've numbed with noise. But it's in that sacred discomfort that the real healing begins. The false relationships begin to fade. The fake validation loses its grip. The shallow connections can't reach you anymore. It's just you, your soul, and God. And that's where you finally start to hear again. Not with your ears but with your spirit.
Yeah.
You hear who you're becoming. You hear what you need to release. You hear the whisper of heaven saying you are more than what you've been through. And this silence is not empty. It's full of transformation. There's a reason Jesus often withdrew to lonely places. There's a reason prophets, healers, and pioneers in Scripture all had seasons of solitude. Because divine clarity rarely comes in crowds. Healing isn't about performance. It's about presence. And you can't be truly present when you're constantly performing for others. The likes don't heal you. The applause doesn't rebuild your identity. In fact, the more people you invite into your pain prematurely, the longer it takes to close the wound. Some healing is private on purpose. It's not meant to be a group activity. It's not meant to be shared until it's sealed. And if you keep inviting people into your healing space who only bring confusion, you'll never get the restoration your soul craves. Social noise is seductive. It gives you the illusion that you're connected, that you're supported, that you're seen. But surface-level attention can never replace deep healing. And the longer you chase that noise, the further you drift from the inner voice that knows exactly what you need. You've been posting your pain and hoping for peace. But peace doesn't come through performance. It comes through privacy. And sometimes you have to disappear from everything just to remember who you are. Sometimes you have to go ghost, not because you hate people, but because you finally love yourself enough to listen inward. The healing version of you needs a different environment. One that's quiet, one that's still, one where God can move freely without interference. You won't find peace in people who don't understand your purpose. You won't find wholeness in the middle of chaos. And you won't find clarity if you never sit long enough in silence to hear what's actually wrong. The trauma you've buried, the heartbreak you've silenced with humor, the disappointment you've masked with productivity, all of it comes to the surface when you choose stillness. But that's the gift. That's not a breakdown. It's a breakthrough. Because what you feel in silence is real. And what's real can be healed. You've cried in secret. You've smiled in pain. You've been the strong one for so long that people don't even know you're breaking. But God knows, and He's calling you into the quiet, not to isolate you but to insulate you, for a new beginning, a new strength, and a deeper identity. There's a voice inside you that's been drowned out by everyone else's opinions, and that voice is begging to be heard again. It's not the voice of fear or shame. It's the voice of your inner healer. It's the voice of your future self. It's the voice of God saying, "Come away with me, and be restored." You've been too accessible to everyone else, but unavailable to your own healing. You've made room for everyone else's problems, but you've neglected your own heart. That's why this season has to be silent. That's why this stretch of your life must be still. Because what's ahead of you will require a version of you that's not broken, not scattered, not desperate for connection, but grounded, healed, and whole. The silence will teach you what the noise never could. It will show you who your real friends are. It will reveal what really matters. It will convict you about what needs to change. And it will comfort you in a way that applause never can. You don't need another conversation. You need consecration. You need sacred space. You need boundaries, not just from others, but from the chaos you've grown used to. Healing begins when you say, "Enough. I'm stepping back to step into myself again." And if that makes people uncomfortable, let it. If people question your distance, let them wonder. You don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing your soul over social expectations. This is your season of silence, not because you're weak, but because you're wise. Not because you're afraid, but because you're being fortified. The strongest version of you is being born in the quiet. In this silence, God is writing the next chapter of your story. A chapter where you're not constantly pouring, but receiving. Not constantly performing, but just being. Not constantly connected to everyone, but deeply connected to yourself. You are healing in the dark, so you can shine in the light. You are unlearning the patterns of self-neglect. You are shedding the old you, the one who tolerated too much, spoke too little, and stayed too long in spaces that weren't sacred. You've spent so much time trying to explain your pain, that you've neglected to sit with it. But now you are, and that's powerful, that's brave, that's holy. When you stop talking long enough to feel again, everything shifts. You begin to process, you begin to release, you begin to understand your triggers, you begin to forgive, not for them, but for your own peace. Silence teaches you to trust your instincts again. It teaches you to hear God without interference. It teaches you that you don't have to earn rest, you deserve it. You don't have to be strong all the time. You're allowed to fall apart. And in that falling, something beautiful happens. You finally come home to yourself. You don't need permission to unplug. You don't need validation for your silence. Healing is a personal journey, and no one gets to tell you how to do it. If that means logging off, ghosting the world, ignoring the invitations, and canceling the noise, do it. Not out of spite, but out of sacred necessity. You are choosing you. You are choosing peace. You are choosing to heal the parts of you that have gone unnoticed, unloved, and unheard for too long. And that decision alone is revolutionary. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more people who have been made whole in silence. And when you finally emerge from this season, you won't come back as the same person. You'll walk differently. You'll speak with authority. You'll move with clarity. You'll know your worth without waiting for someone to validate it. Because you will have found something in the silence that no applause could give you. You found you. You found your voice. You found God's voice. And now you're ready to rise. Not from popularity, but from purpose. So stay in the quiet. Stay in the sacred. Let healing do its perfect work. Because when you return, you won't just be better. You'll be unshakable. Not everyone deserves access to your energy, thoughts, or evolution. You've got to understand this if you ever want peace in your life. Your spirit is sacred. Your mind is powerful. Your growth is priceless. But when you hand that out freely, to people who neither value it, nor respect it, you delay your own destiny. You dilute your strength by sharing your energy with people who only drain it. You confuse your mind by explaining your thoughts to people committed to misunderstanding you. And you slow your evolution by trying to bring along those who have no intention of growing themselves. This season is about discernment, about realizing that just because someone was present in your past, doesn't mean they qualify for your future. Not everyone is worthy of your light. Some people are allergic to it, and you've been dimming yourself to keep them comfortable for far too long. You don't owe everyone access. That includes people you once loved, friends you grew up with, co-workers you once leaned on, even family. Emotional loyalty to people who sabotage your peace is not love. It's bondage. You have to stop confusing guilt with loyalty. Just because they were there when you were broken, doesn't mean they deserve a front row seat. Now that some people only love the version of you that needed saving, not the version that's finally saving yourself. And that's the danger. You'll keep inviting people to a healed table who only know how to feast on your weakness. They don't come to uplift, they come to extract, and you feel it. Every time you share your dreams and leave the conversation doubting yourself, you feel it. When your joy is met with jealousy, your growth with sarcasm, your elevation with silence, that's not love, that's spiritual theft. It's not arrogance to protect your space. It's wisdom. When you allow access to your thoughts, your vision, and your evolution too freely, you begin to internalize the wrong voices. Your doubts become your feet. Your criticism becomes your inner dialogue. And before you know it, your progress slows. Because you're trying to draw a dead weight uphill. Let that go. There's a reason eagles fly alone. Because the altitude they're called to reach is not sustainable for every bird. You are trying to build something sacred in a noisy, distracted, critical world. And if you don't guard your ears, your eyes, your heart, you will unknowingly hand over your power to people who would rather see you plateau than rise. Stop explaining your growth to people who are comfortable in stagnation. Stop looking for applause from people who are intimidated by your awakening. Your evolution isn't up for debate. It's not a group project. This isn't a vote. You don't need their validation to become what God has called you. You don't need their understanding to walk in purpose. You don't need their permission to change. Transformation is personal. And if someone truly loves you, they'll respect your process, even if they don't understand it. But if their access to you is based on who you used to be, then you're no longer in a relationship. You're in memory. And you can't build a future on memory. You can't fly forward with people still trying to clip your wings. You are evolving. Your priorities are shifting. Your boundaries are getting firmer. Your energy, it's getting cleaner. That's not something to apologize for. That's something to protect. You're not obligated to keep explaining why you're not available like you used to be. Why you don't answer every time. Why you don't show up to every function. Why you're more silent than usual. Growth will always cost you access. And people who truly love you will understand that sometimes distance is necessary for destiny. But people who only love what you gave them will make your silence feel like betrayal. Don't be moved by that. Let them go. You're not being cold. You're being cold. Think about this. If a plant has outgrown its pot, it must be transplanted, or it will die. It doesn't know how comfortable the old pot was. If it's too small for the roots, the plant will suffocate. You're that plant. And many of the conversations, relationships, and environments you once fit in are now too small for your soul. And if you keep staying just to make others comfortable, you'll suffocate your own purpose. You'll shrink in spaces you were meant to outgrow. You'll silence your voice just to avoid But listen closely. Conflict is not the enemy of growth. Complacency is. Some of the most powerful shifts in your life will come until you finally say, I'm done giving access to people who can't respect my value. Your energy, expensive. Your thoughts are gold. Your evolution, it's divine. Stop offering it like a free sample to people who don't even value themselves. Will know you. You've poured into people who never said thank you. You've encouraged people who tore you down in pride. You've supported people who watched you drown and never threw a rope. And yet, here you are still trying to carry into your next season. It's time to stop. This isn't bid. This is boundaries. And boundaries are biblical. Even Jesus withdrew from Christ. Even Jesus said, Even Jesus had circles within circles. He knew that not everyone could go where he was going. If Jesus didn't give everyone equal access, why don't let misplaced loyalty destroy your divine assignment? You weren't born to stay in cycles. You were born to break them. You weren't born to beg for support. You were born to walk in purpose whether they clap or not. Some of the greatest doors God will open in your life will require you to leave some people behind. Not because you're better, but because your calling is bigger. And they can't handle the weight of where you. They love the insecure, the uncertain you, the always available you. But now that you're sitting down, standing tall, and choosing peace, they're uncomfortable. Let them be. That's not your problem to fix. Silence is not disconnection. It's discernment. There's power in pulling back. There's strength in not responding. There's healing in choosing solitude over stress. You are under no obligation to bleed publicly, to explain privately, or to keep proving your worth to people who are spiritually blind. Let yourself speak. Let your distance heal. Let your elevation show them what words never could. You're not who you used to be. And that's the point. If your presence has changed,
It's because your purpose has to. Don't apologize for evolving. Apologize for waiting so long to protect your peace. The truth is, you already know it is not good for you. You already feel it in your spirit. The tension, the discomfort, the energy shift every time they speak. But you've been second-guessing your intuition because you don't want to hurt people. But here's the truth. The more you avoid hurting others, the more you avoid yourself. And you can't if you keep betraying your own soul for the sake of others. Your peace is not up for sacrifice. Your clarity is not up for compromise. Your evolution is not up for public opinion. It's time to ghost some people, not out of malice, but out of mission. Not because you're angry, but because you're alone. When you start protecting your peace, people will call you distant. When you start protecting your energy, people will call you selfish. When you start protecting your mind, people will call you fake. Let them. You don't need to defend it. Decision was keeping your spirit intact. God didn't call you to be accessible. He called you to be anointed. And that requires separation. That requires pruning. That requires being misunderstood. The next level of your life won't require you to explain. It'll require you to obey. Protect your evolution like it's sacred. Because it is. Everyone deserves to walk with you in the light. If they couldn't handle you in the dark, let them remember the version of you they once knew. But keep becoming the version of you God created.